Good evening to those bored enough to watch. In a previous video, I discussed Five Nights at Freddy's Beta, a game that seeks to emulate what a beta version of the first game in the series would be like. This was done in some interesting ways, such as certain animatronics being replaced and features being added to the game based on originally removed features from the official version during its development. In this video, I want to discuss Five Nights at Freddy's 2 Beta, a game that aims to do the same thing with the second game in the series. I think that it does this well, but it does present some issues with the liberties it takes with the animatronics and their functionalities. Hence, in this video, I want to discuss this game, everything I liked and disliked, and why I would recommend it to you. So, with that said, let's discuss Five Nights at Freddy's 2 Beta. Much like with the first game, this one functions similarly to the official version of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. However, a lot of alterations have been made to the game to express the concept of this being a beta version of that game. At least to me, this game takes a lot more liberties with the alterations it makes with the game compared to its predecessor. While I don't think that this is a problem and I think it's interesting to see, I do think that there are some issues with some of the alterations that I'll soon discuss. For now, the game situates you within an office in between two doors and a hallway in front of you. You also have access to the mask and the camera system, which you can use to monitor the building and watch the animatronics. One of the many things you'll notice is that this game uses doorways instead of the vents we see in the official version of the game. I think that this may have been done to express the concept of this being a beta, since doors were a prominent part of the first game, and it's likely that the game is trying to convey the idea that this was an early version of what the office would have looked like, and as a result, things from the first game are reused, such as the door. In addition, the power system from the first game is also here instead of the batteries you're given in the official version of the game, further expressing the idea of this being an early version of the game and that this is most likely here as a temporary feature being replaced by the batteries. This is likely because typically during the development of games, especially sequels, things from previous games are typically reused, such as code, models, or other things as framework to be replaced by something else later in development. These temporary assets are typically present during such early stages of development to get a basic prototype of the gameplay loop working, which is why I believe that the power system is included here. The mask also mostly functions the same way it would in the official version of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. However, in this version of the game, it has the added functionality of the toxic meter. It's well-known trivia that the official version of the game was originally going to include something of this nature. However, it was removed due to it having seemed too artificial, which resulted in more natural ways to ensure that the player couldn't have the mask on at all times being used instead, such as the music box and the fact that the mask doesn't work on Foxy. With this in mind, it's easy to see why the toxic meter is included in this version of the game. The cameras also have some notable differences too. For example, the layout of the pizzeria is somewhat different as some rooms were added to accommodate new animatronics. Furthermore, the cameras for the vents can't be accessed because they don't exist in this game. The music box is also completely absent in this game. As a result, the puppet is given a completely different mechanic, which I'll discuss in due course. In general, I think that this game does a good job with expressing the concept of this being a beta version of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. A lot of things were changed to reflect that, and it's worth highlighting and appreciating the fact that this game still manages to ensure that it doesn't overdo these changes, because a lot of things here do align with the concept while still ensuring that for the most part, the core gameplay of Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is intact and it hasn't been significantly changed, which I think is an important thing to achieve for a game like this. Although, I do think that some of these changes does impact the core gameplay of this game, which I will discuss later. I also think it's worth appreciating the smaller details in this game, such as the prize corner being referred to as the prize counter. This was most likely done because that's what the phone guy refers to it as in the official version of the game, which one could use to infer that the prize corner was originally called the prize counter, and that this change was made rather late into development because the audio had already been recorded and implemented, hence meaning it would have been too late and impractical to re-record it for the sake of changing a single word, hence resulting in it being left in the game. It's possible that this inference is wrong and that Scott Cawthon simply made a mistake during the recording of the audio and didn't think too much of it, but nonetheless, such an inference is reasonable and not too far-fetched, which is why I think an effort was made to change the prize corner's name to the prize counter. The animatronics in this game function similarly to how they would in the official version of the game, although there are some who are outliers to this. The toy animatronics will work the same way they would in the official version, with Toy Bonnie and Chica roaming the pizzeria and eventually making their way to your doorway. When you see them standing there, you need to put on the mask, which which will initiate their blackout sections. Chica actually has one in this game, unlike in the official version, where hers is absent, despite there seemingly having been assets made for it to appear in the game. Either way, when their blackout sections are complete, they'll leave and she'll be allowed to take off the mask. There is more of an importance placed in taking off the mask as soon as possible due to the toxic meter increasing in this version of the game. Toy Freddy will also roam the pizzeria and eventually enter your office directly from the hall. When he makes an appearance, you need to ensure that you have the mask on during this blackout section. Much like with Foxy in this game's predecessor, the Mangle isn't in this game. Instead, New Foxy is present in the Kids Cove, which has its own section added to the cameras. The Kids Cove is very close to the office, and throughout the night, New Foxy will undergo a series of phases before making a run for your office to attack you. When he does this, you'll be jump scared with there being nothing you can do once he leaves the Kids Cove due to the doors being absent in this game. Instead, you'll need to consistently watch the cove on the cameras and flash your light into the room, which will push New Foxy back and cause him to revert to his first phase. The withered animatronics also work similarly to how they would in the official version of the game. Chica and Bonnie will wander the pizzeria and eventually arrive in the office. Unlike their toy counterparts, withered Bonnie and Chica won't be seen at the doors and they'll instead enter the office immediately, much like how they do in the official game. Hence, you need to put on the mask and wait for them to leave when they enter. Withered Freddy will work the same way he would in the official game, although there are some slight differences. For example, he'll indicate when he moves through the sound of his laugh, which was a feature prominently seen in the previous game. It's interesting to see it return in this rendition of Five Nights at Freddy's 2, and its inclusion does help express the idea of this being a beta version of that game, as it could be interpreted that this feature is simply a leftover from the first game. Either way, you ward off Freddy the same way you would with the other animatronics, which is through putting on the mask. This game features different designs for the withered animatronics, as they've been altered to resemble their models from this game's predecessor, hence expressing the notion that the withered animatronics in this beta version of the game are just edited versions of their models from this game's predecessor. The puppet in this game has an entirely different functionality compared to what's seen in the official game. Due to the absence of the music box in this game, the puppet instead requires you to continually flash your light at it during the night to stall its movement. This is because if left unmonitored for too long, it'll gradually leave its box in the prize counter and begin making its way to your office. It'll eventually find itself in the hallway outside your office. You'll then need to flash your light at it to stop it from entering your office. When it does eventually enter, you need to quickly put on the mask or else it'll attack you. I personally don't think that the changes to the music box were necessary for this game, and I think it somewhat hurts the core gameplay of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. I understand that the music box may have been removed to express the idea that it simply hadn't been added in a beta version of the game, and as a result, the puppet likely had a different functionality as a placeholder until it was finally added, or something else of that nature. However, in the official version of the game, the music box is a fundamental part of the game, since it was your incentive to check the cameras consistently to wind it up and prevent the puppet from leaving. The fact that you couldn't stop it once it left to attack you was a consequence for not checking the cameras, and I think that including a way to stop the marionette even after it leaves is counterproductive to that aspect of the second game's design. I think that the music box should have been left alone, or to express the concept of this being a beta version, perhaps the flashlight could have been a temporary placeholder for the music box. You need to flash your light into the prize counter throughout the night to stop the puppet from leaving. To the game's credit, something like this is already in the game, as you can stall it through your flashlight. However, I think that being able to stop the puppet once it leaves through the mask and when it's in the hallway is counterproductive to this, since you're given less incentive to emphasize checking on the puppet through the camera and strategizing on how to complete a night. I think that failure to keep watch of the puppet should have resulted in a more noticeable consequence, much like how it is in the official game. The game does have something like this with New Foxy, which makes the game engaging and fun since you're given a reason to check the cameras consistently. I think that something similar should have been done with the puppet, as the engaging nature of the game would be more prominent, which would only benefit this game, and perhaps an in-universe explanation of sorts would be that including both the puppet and New Foxy would have made the game too difficult, which resulted in one of them being removed. The strategy for this game is mostly the same as it would be in the official version of the game. You need to engage in a cycle between checking the office and the cameras. This is emphasized a lot more for this game in particular due to there now being two animatronics you can keep at bay via the cameras, with only one of them being essential to keep warded off. This is because once New Foxy leaves the Kids Cove, he can't be stopped as far as I'm aware, so it's important to ensure that you regularly flash your light at him to ensure that he doesn't leave. The puppet can be stalled via the cameras, but in my experience there's no real need to, and if you're regularly checking the halls in the office, it's likely that you won't really encounter it all that much. Preserving power is important for this game because of the fact that it drains much quicker, hence you need to ensure that you strategize usages of things such as the cameras and the flashlight in the office to ensure that you don't run out of power during the night. In general, I think that the game does a decent job with ensuring that the player is engaged with the experience in an interesting way. Additions such as New Foxy do a good job of furthering this, although I do think that the puppet can be counterproductive for this engaging nature, particularly with the cameras. Overall, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 Beta is a game that achieves its goals very well. I think that the alterations and changes made to the game in order to express its aim do a good job of retaining the core gameplay of Five Nights at Freddy's 2 while still presenting interesting changes to the game. However, I do think that the design of the game is hindered somewhat by these additions, so while I think that this is an engaging and fun game, it doesn't achieve some aspects as well as it could have. Hence, with my critiques and compliments in mind, I would recommend Five Nights at Freddy's 2 Beta. So, there's the video. I hope you all enjoyed it. I plan on making one more video about the beta version of the third game, so I hope you can all look forward to that. If you want to view the list of games I want to make videos about in the future, you can always do so through the link in the description. Additionally, if you want to follow me, then my socials will be linked in the description, as well as any afterthoughts or messages I may want to add. With that, I haven't really got much else I want to say, so I'll see you all in my next video. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I wish you all a very pleasant evening.